The story of Arknights unfolds on a planet called Terra. It is a world shaped by catastrophe, conflict, and a substance known as Originium. That story belongs to Terra. Enfield takes place somewhere else. On a distant moon, light years away, a different chapter is unfolding. A chapter shaped not by catastrophes, but by isolation, decay, and an environment that resists permanence. This is Talos-II. Before Talos-II became a frontier, before it became a workplace, and before it became a battleground, it was home. Humanity did not arrive on Talos-II by accident. Long before the present age, before the industries and outposts that now mark its surface, the ancestors of Terran civilization originated here. Talos-II was not a colony, it was the first cradle. And Terra, the world most people now believe to be humanity's birthplace, came later. At some point, lost to incomplete records, humanity left Talos-II behind and crossed through a structure now known as a cosmic gate, arriving on Terra. There, they built a vast civilization beneath skies, ruled by catastrophes and shaped by Originium. Terra became the center of history. Talos-II faded into myth. Until 152 years ago. That year, the cosmic gate was opened once more. Humanity crossed it again, returning not to a new world, but to an ancestral one. Official records would celebrate this moment as paving the way, but those who understood the truth called it something else: the homecoming. Terra and Talos-II are not twins, but they are uncannily synchronized. Terra is far larger, with a planetary radius more than 1.5 times that of Talos-II. Curiously, both worlds share near identical cycles of day and night, as well as seasonal rhythms. This was no coincidence. Scholars believe precursor technology calibrated both planets to match a long lost celestial template, allowing Terran settlers to bring their calendars, timekeeping, and agricultural system with them seamlessly. It was as though Talos-II had been waiting. But while time itself aligned, space did not. From the moment settlers arrived, Terra became unreachable by any conventional means. Its location among the stars remains unknown. Even now, after generations of astronomical research, no telescope on Talos-II has been able to find even a trace of their former home. All that remains of Terra exists in fragments, records, cultural memory, stories of a world where Originium first emerged in vast, prime veins, where crystalline clusters reshaped entire landscapes. A world richer than Talos-II could ever be. Talos-II, by contrast, is a moon. It orbits a massive gas giant known simply as Talos, a constant presence in the sky, vast and inescapable. Talos-II's atmosphere is nitrogen-rich, breathable, and warm enough to sustain life. Mountain ranges fracture its continents. Rivers and dense vegetation support a resilient biosphere. Against the odds, it was habitable, and so humanity endured. When the cosmic gate collapsed only 5 years after colonization began, there was no evacuation, no return. The Terrans who had crossed over survived on Talos-II for more than a century, building towns, outposts, and supply networks across the surface of the moon. Generations were born who had never seen Terra, who knew it only as a story. Talos-II became civilization's last foothold. Yet, even then, there were signs that this world was not merely natural. Astronomical surveys reveal that while several moons orbited the gas giant Talos, only Talos-II was habitable. Its position within the system, its climate stability, and the presence of the cosmic gate itself suggests intention rather than chance. A gift prepared in advance, or a test waiting to be failed. Then came the war. During the first hour of the First Angloy War, which we will be looking at further down the road, reports flooded in from the northern Talos-II. Witnesses described cascading veils of light spreading across the sky. These phenomena would later be named the Aurora of Talos-II. At first, they were only seen from the ground. Their full scale was revealed only after Endfield Industries placed an orbital vehicle into the artificial orbit. From space, it became clear that the aurora was structured, active, expanding. The aurora consists of two components. The lower layer, known as the auroral barrier, displays energy signatures disturbingly similar to the Terran starpod. On Terra, the starpod is an invisible high-energy barrier in the upper atmosphere, a false sky that no aircraft, no satellite, no civilization has ever been able to breach. Anything that touches it is torn apart, its systems destabilized, its integrity erased. Talos-II sky is different from Terra's, yet the resemblance is close enough to be unsettling. It does not envelope the entire planet, but it surrounds the North Polar region and several isolated zones. Above it stretches the ether tide, a vast auroral canopy visible to the unaided eye, constantly flaring and surging. Within these flares, something new is born. Active Blight. For over a century, humanity has attempted to reach the northern pole of Talos-II. Every attempt has failed. Orbital deployments cannot breach the auroral barrier. Drones burn out. Aircrafts disintegrate. Land traversal is impossible, both due to the Blight itself and the presence of Angloy, entities that fiercely defend regions touched by the auroral light. The cosmic gate lies beneath this veil. Whatever remains of it, and whatever remains of Terra on the other side, is entirely beyond human reach. On Terra, auroras were rare and regional, seen only in the far north. On Talos-II, the aurora is not a spectacle, it is a countdown. Humanity is not stranded on Talos-II. Humanity is being enclosed. And that is where the story of Arknights Endfield truly begins. To understand a world shaped by Originium and Blight, we first need to understand what Originium was. On Terra, civilization formed around a single inescapable truth. Originium was everywhere, in the bedrock beneath cities, in the air after catastrophes, embedded in machines, architecture, and eventually in living bodies. Originium appeared as a dark, semi-transparent, crystalline mineral, sometimes black, sometimes catching strange hues of blue or gold. Unlike ordinary minerals, it did not remain inert. It grew. It spread. Veins extended on their own, assimilating surrounding matter, reshaping the environment simply by existing within it. Left undisturbed, Originium metastasized. At its center, Originium possessed a core, a pure crystal that emitted a faint yellow glow. This core was volatile, unstable, and extraordinarily dense with energy. Early civilizations used it directly, often with catastrophic results. Over time, people learned restraint. The layers that formed around the core, crystalline shells hardened by exposure to environment, proved more reliable. These shells could be refined, condensed, and shaped into circuitry and machinery. The longer Originium existed, the more durable these outer layers became, though extracting them demanded increasingly advanced technology. Power came from careful separation. Refined Originium became the foundation of modern life. It powered cities that never stopped moving, it fueled industries, communications, and transportation. It enabled Originium arts, the manipulation of reality through structured energy. There was no equivalent alternative. Other sources could not match its density, its adaptability, its almost cooperative responsiveness to human intent. Terra chose Originium because nothing else worked. But Originium did not remain external. Over time, its particle-centered bloodstreams, cells assimilated its structure. The body attempted to adapt and failed. This condition became known as oropathy. For those infected, Originium granted no power, only degradation, crystallization of flesh, pain, social exile, a visible reminder that progress had a biological cost. Civilization learned to live with this contradiction, power and disease drawn from the same source. Originium was also inseparable from disaster. Its presence was strongest where catastrophe struck, and many believed it played a role in causing them. Whether it was a catalyst or consequence hardly mattered. Wherever Originium accumulated, instability followed. And yet, people rebuilt again and again. Originium did not punish systems. Machines could be reinforced, infrastructure could be redesigned, cities could adapt. The cost was paid in health, in labor, in lives quietly written off as acceptable losses. Originium punished bodies. This was the world Arknights depicted, a civilization that did not solve its greatest problem, but optimized around it. And it is important to understand that history, because Talos-II does not reject it, it inherits it. When humanity returned to Talos-II, Originium came with them. It became the backbone of energy production once again, refined and regulated with lessons learned from Terra's failures. Diseases that once defined an era were no longer death sentences. Containment, treatment, and long-term suppression reshaped what survival looked like. But Talos-II introduced something else, something Originium alone could not explain. Here, the greatest danger was not what lived inside people, it was what happened to the world itself. The Blight was not a refinement of Originium, nor a simple escalation of past disasters. It was a different category of threat entirely, one that changed the rules civilization had learned to play by. If Originium punished living beings, the Blight punished systems. And that single distinction is what turns Endfield into a fundamentally different kind of story. The Blight is not a single phenomenon. It is a general term used to describe hazardous events that manifest across Talos-II's surface, underground, in its atmosphere, and even in orbit. These events are divided into two states: active Blight and what remains after it passes. Active blight does not behave like fire, corrosion, or radiation. When it appears, reality itself becomes unstable. Matter can be dissociated, inverted, or even entirely removed from physical space. In some cases, time is affected alongside it, stripped away in fragments so small they are almost impossible to measure, or so large they erase entire decades in an instant. The destruction can be absolute, or it can be subtle, unfolding slowly over years. Both outcomes are considered normal. When active blight finally decays, it leaves behind static blight, a viscous asphalt like residue coating whatever remains, marking the places where the world failed to hold itself together. Surviving a blight event does not mean escaping unscathed. Those exposed often report auditory hallucinations, visual distortions, and severe psychological stress, even when no physical brain injury can be detected. This condition, known as blight-induced brain injury, is almost always fatal. The blight does not simply destroy bodies, it disrupts perception itself, making reality unreliable from within. On Talos-II, survival is not just about avoiding dangerous places. It is about continuing to trust the world around you, knowing that trust can be broken without warning. The blight does not appear at random. Its emergence is strongly correlated with etherside activity, regions where the boundary between real space and another dimension grows thin. These boundaries are measured through depth readings, and when those readings become positive, the likelihood of an active blight rises sharply. Where the separation weakens, reality destabilizes. Sometimes this manifests as visible rifts, other times the boundary collapses silently and the blight appears without warning. It is a structural failure of space itself. Because the blight cannot be cured, Talos-II has learned to live by containment. In regions like Wuling, local manifestations such as Zhangli are suppressed through vast purification arrays, including networks of Tianxi pillars designed to stabilize affected areas. These systems reduce risk, slow spread, and make habitation possible, but they do not solve the problem. Blight seeps into soil, into aquifers, into the infrastructure meant to contain it. Every solution creates maintenance, every stabilized region becomes a responsibility. Talos-II survives through vigilance. On Terra, the central question was how much suffering civilization could endure in pursuit of progress. On Talos-II, the question is more unsettling. How much instability can a world support before progress itself becomes meaningless? The Blight does not ask to be defeated. It does not wait to be overcome. It simply exists wherever the structure of reality allows it to. And that is the shift. Arknights was about surviving a broken world. Endfield is about operating inside one that cannot be made whole. Talos-II is not organized around nations. There are no borders drawn for identity, no capitals built for symbolism. On a world where space itself can fail, sovereignty is a luxury humanity could not afford. What emerged instead was a framework designed for endurance rather than ideology, the Civilization Band. The civilization band is not a government in the traditional sense. It is a cooperative system bound together by the Band Accord, built to ensure that human life on Talos-II remains viable. Membership is conditional, authority is distributed. Autonomy exists, but only within clearly defined limits. The Accord does not recognize self declared nation states. Instead, it enforces specialization. Each member exists to perform a function essential to survive, and to do so efficiently. Over 90% of Talos-II's population lives as band residents within territories administered by its member organizations. Daily life is shaped not by laws in abstract, but by logistics, maintenance cycles, and access to stabilized ground. Within the civilization band, three organizations dominate by necessity rather than decree. They are commonly known as the Major Three: the United Workers Syndicates, the Talos-II General Chamber of Commerce, and the Hongshan Academy of Sciences. None of them are known for governing Talos-II, but to keep it running. If Talos-II expands at all, it does so through the United Workers Syndicates. The UWST is the largest union of worker syndicate on the moon, responsible for most industrial construction, mining operations, and raw material production. Their equipment shapes the landscape of human settlement, transforming unstable ground into something briefly dependable. The syndicates embody humanity's instincts to build forward, to replace uncertainty with infrastructure. Even as their organization grows heavier and more inflexible, their output remains relentless. Talos-II advances because the UWST continues to construct, even when permanence is not guaranteed. If construction is the skeleton of Talos-II, commerce is its circulation. The Talos-II General Chamber of Commerce oversees logistics, manufacturing, and services across the moon. Its convoys bind distant settlements together, moving supplies through regions where interruption can mean abandonment. The truckers who maintain these routes during period of extreme instability became the conductors of the TGCC, turning survival logistics into a permanent economic system. Today, the Chamber's leadership sees itself as the quiet architect of civilization, confident that the systems they maintain are sufficient to carry Talos-II forward. Where others build and move, Hongshan studies. The Hongshan Academy of Sciences functions as the research backbone of Talos-II, focusing on agriculture, blight containment, ethercide phenomena, and long-term habitation strategies. Their work underpins nearly every stabilization effort on the moon. Hongshan operates through a network of regional academies rather than a centralized authority. Knowledge is accumulated, archived, and distributed carefully, with an emphasis on continuity and verification. On Talos-II, understanding the environment is a survival requirement. Yet, even together, the major three operate within limits. They build where ground can be stabilized. They transport where routes can be maintained. They study what can be safely observed. Beyond those margins lies the frontier, where conditions shift faster than institution can adapt. Endfield Industries was created for that gap. Founded to explore, research, and industrialize frontier regions, Endfield operates where established infrastructure cannot yet function. Their technologies are designed for controlled operation under unstable conditions. Automated industry complexes, protocol Originium teleportation, controlled Originium distribution, the OMVD Jung, Talos-II's only orbital platform. Endfield Industries complements the major three, enabling what they cannot yet sustain. It promises feasibility over permanence. Life on Talos-II is not defined by victory or conquest. It is defined by persistence. Every organization within the civilization band represents a different approach to the same problem: how to continue existing in a world that resists stability. Some build, some regulate, some transport, some experiment at the edge of the unknown. Together, they create continuity. On Talos-II, civilization is not something that is achieved. It is something that is maintained. For the first few years, Talos-II was dangerous in familiar ways: rough terrain, unstable climates, long supply chains stretched thin, nothing humanity had not endured before. Then, in the fifth year after arrival, the planet answered back. Within the first 24 hours, anchor points appeared without warning. From them came swarms of constructs that no human system had catalogued, no doctrine anticipated. The northern settlement, built around the cosmic gate itself, was erased almost immediately. Infrastructure failed. Command structures collapsed. The polar region fell silent. It was the beginning of what history would later call the First Angloy War. The early phase was not a war of strategy, it was a survival under pressure. Angloy incursions struck faster than humanity could respond, overwhelming forward bases and forcing a retreat southward. With every kilometer lost, so too was technology. Factories were abandoned, power grids failed, systems designed for expansion were repurposed for flight. By the time 6 years had passed, Talos-II no longer felt like a frontier. It felt like a narrowing corridor. Then, in the 11th year, something changed. Not a miracle, not a weapon. Talos-II organized. The figure now known as the Administrator assisted in reorganizing the scattered human forces, rebuilding chains of commands and restoring the ability to resist rather than merely endure. What followed was not victory but containment. Campaigns pushed back Angloy activity in the southern regions, buying humanity something it had not had since the war began: time. By year 15, a major Angloy disaster had ceased. Some declared the war over. Others would argue it did not truly end until humanity rewrote how it governed itself. 2 years later, with the formation of the Civilization Band. The Angloy are often described as creatures, but the word fails almost immediately. They are constructs of natural matter bound together by halo-like structures, assembled by anchors through a process that resembles industrial production more than biology. They build, they dismantle, they imitate, they attack. And yet, whether they can be called alive remains unresolved. Each anchor produces Angloy within a limited range of patterns. Movement, form, and method of attack vary, but not infinitely. This consistency allowed humanity to develop the standard Angloid classification system, a taxonomy born not from curiosity but necessity. And still, the Angloy resist understanding. They do not evolve in the way life does. They do not learn. For over a century, their behavior followed predictable rules. Random anchor falls, raids from unknown sources, sudden destruction, then silence. Until Valley 4. Their observation logs recorded something unprecedented. Angoloi and humans attacking the same target, acting in alignment, a theoretical impossibility given everything known about Angoloid signaling and communication. The incident forced an uncomfortable conclusion. The assumptions humanity built around the Angoloi might be changing. Some see them as storms, others see them as machines, a few dangerously as life waiting to be domesticated. There are researchers who speak of riding Angoloi, of interfacing with their halos, of turning Talos-II's most persistent threat into infrastructure. Most consider these ideas reckless. History suggests Talos-II waits to punish recklessness. The Angoloi were the first truth Talos-II forced humanity to accept. They would not be the last, because not every threat in the world comes from anchors or halos. Some were human hands. But not all defense happens on the ground. High above Talos-II, fixed in geostationary orbit, hangs the OMV Dijong. Built during humanity's darkest moment, when the cosmic gate was already lost and replication was impossible, Dijong is the last and the only orbital vehicle of Talos-II. It is powered by a massive core of protocol Originium, sustaining systems that humanity cannot afford to lose again. Teleportation networks, automated industrial control, strategic coordination across an entire world. This is where Endfield Industries operates, and this is where the administrator resides. In Talos-II's recorded history, the administrator appears not as a ruler, nor as a commander in uniform, but as a constant intervention at moments where collapse seemed inevitable. The administrator reorganized human resistance during the First Angoloi War. They mapped frontiers when no one else could reach them. They wielded Originium and protocol systems with a mastery no other faction has been able to replicate. And yet, almost no one has seen them. Other members of the Civilization Band know Endfield Industries possesses something singular, something they cannot challenge directly. What they do not know is the administrator's identity, or the cost of their power. Long-term hibernation is required. Extended absences punctuate their influence. When they are active, systems move. When they are not, Endfield continues on momentum alone. Some of Enfield's most trusted agents did not arrive through normal means. Hidden behind the highest level of authority are operators known as reconveners. They are not employees in the traditional sense, nor are they bound to infill facilities. Instead, they move across Talos-II independently, acting as liaisons, observers, and interventionists. Their origin lies in the first Originium crystal that crossed into this world, damaged during the final battle of the First Angoloi War. Within its corrupted data structures, fragments of identity persisted, beacons within chaos. The first reconvener emerged accidentally, others followed by design. Each carries partial memories of lives that once existed on Terra, distant and incomplete, yet enough to grant them skills and instincts their original counterparts possessed. They know they are unique, they know they do not fully belong, and still, every reconvener who has stepped onto Talos-II has chosen to assist the administrator. This is creation, not resurrection, and creation always leaves consequences. Talos-II is not held together by a single force. It survives because many different answers coexist under pressure. Fortresses in the north, trade and industries across the frontier, science that refuses to abandon old allegiances, an organization in orbit delaying collapse one system at a time. And beneath it all, the Angeloi persist. Not defeated, not understood, simply contained. This is life on Talos-II. Not a world waiting to be saved, but one that continues only because someone is always watching the margins, repairing the cracks, and deciding what must be sacrificed next. And this is where your story begins. Alright, if you made it this far, thank you, genuinely. This is my first time making YouTube videos like this, and honestly, putting this together was both terrifying and a lot of fun. If you enjoyed it, I really appreciate you sticking around and giving it a chance. I do want to make one thing very clear before we wrap up. Everything in this video is based on currently available beta information and wiki material. Enfield isn't out yet, and a lot of this world, its story, and even its terminology can and probably will change over time. This isn't meant to be a definitive account of the setting, it's just a snapshot of what we know so far, stitched together into something coherent. Once the game releases, some of this might age beautifully, some of it might age terribly, and that's honestly part of the fun. If you have ideas for future videos, things you want explained, factions you want broken down, or even corrections and different interpretations, I genuinely love to hear them. Drop them in the comments. This whole thing works a lot better if it's a conversation and not me just talking at a wall. I'm really excited to keep making more of these. There's a lot more to explore here, and this is just the beginning. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.